Hi, Kids Life. Happy and merry day after Christmas. I hope you had a wonderful day yesterday and got to spend time with family and friends and just enjoying the day. I'm glad that you're here joining us today. It's always good to see you. And today we're actually going to be talking about how Jesus was a boy, right? He was not always just an adult. He grew up. And the story today is all about actually Jesus and his parents getting separated when he was just 12 years old. But before we get started, we're gonna talk about things that we do a lot of times, traditions, right? And around Christmas time, we always have lots of traditions. Maybe your family has some. Here at One Life, we have some traditions. We always have a Christmas Eve service. We usually do glow sticks at the Christmas Eve service. Here at Kids Life, we often have a prayer at the end of our time together, and we always listen to Bible stories. And traditions are activities or events that we repeat because they're important to us, right? What are some of your favorite traditions? It doesn't have to be about Christmas. Maybe you have birthday traditions or other holiday traditions. Take a moment. You can even pause if you need to and think about what are some of your traditions. Well, traditions help us celebrate events or special memories. When Jesus was a young boy, his family had a tradition of traveling to Jerusalem each year for the Passover festival. Now, this was a Jewish festival because Jesus was Jewish, and it was a very important time for the Jewish people. And in our story, we'll read about what happened during their traditional celebration of the Passover when Jesus was just 12 years old, which maybe will just a couple years older or even a year or maybe even less than a year of how old you are right now, right? But before we get into our story, go ahead and let's watch our World Kids video down below. In this one, Leo, Ada, Otto, and Tot are headed to a retirement community for Christmas dinner. What could possibly go wrong? Let's watch out. Let's watch it and find out, okay? So pause here, go right down below, and you can watch the World Kid video and then come back up and we'll finish with some questions. All right, so that was interesting to hear some of their traditions, right? Otto always seems to get into some sort of trouble, doesn't he? But it was, in this case, he was able to make some new friends, right? So here's some questions for you. What relatives do you usually visit at Christmas? Do you have a group that you usually get to see? I know in our family that we always go to see my parents, and so that's like Noel and Kaysen's grandparents, and also their other grandparents, because they actually live very close together. They only live about 5 miles apart. So we usually see both grandparents on Christmas, which is pretty special. Sometimes we do Christmas Eve and then Christmas, but how about you? Who do you see? Who are Leo, Ada, Otto, and Tot going to visit? You remember who it was? Their uncle, right? What are your favorite Christmas traditions? Maybe you did some of them yesterday, right? You can pause and talk about that. What's good about keeping traditions? What is it that makes those things good? Think about that. And what's good about allowing traditions to change over time? Right? Like in our story in the World Kids video, right? Things sort of changed a little bit with when they were inviting other people to their dinner, right? And that's sometimes great. It's good to be able to have traditions, but also know that they can also kind of change as they go on. So today's story is when Jesus's family was Jewish, and the tradition was to travel to Jerusalem each year for the Passover festival. So when Jesus was 12, his family went to Jerusalem like usual, but on the way home, Mary and Joseph realized that something very unusual had happened. Jesus was missing. Okay, so we're going to turn to page 174. Here's the story. Here's a picture of them. You can see them traveling, and then you can see the faces of Mary and Joseph when they found out Jesus wasn't with them. So let's listen to the story. Phew. This comes from Luke chapter 2, verses 41 through 52. Mary and Joseph were exhausted. Their family had spent a whole week in Jerusalem celebrating Passover. The Passover festival was exciting and busy. The smell of food was everywhere. The air was full of singing, and the temple was packed with people. Mary yawned. Finally, they were traveling home. Joseph, Mary said, looking around, where's Jesus? He was missing. Have you seen Jesus? They asked aunts and uncles and cousins. We can't find him. Nobody knew where Jesus was. Mary grabbed Joseph's arm. We have to go back to Jerusalem. We have to find Jesus. And Ada says, my mom couldn't find me once when we were at the public library. I wasn't done learning yet. Mary and Joseph looked near the city gate. No Jesus. Maybe he was hungry. They ran to the food tents. No Jesus. Jesus loved singing. They searched the choirs outside the temple. No Jesus. For 3 days, they searched everywhere. No Jesus. Finally, they entered the temple, and Mary gasped when she saw him. There's Jesus. Jesus was telling grown-up teachers about God. Mary's and Joseph's eyes grew wide in surprise. The teachers were amazed. Jesus was only 12 years old. We were so worried, Mary scolded Jesus. We searched for you everywhere. Have you ever had your parents be worried about you? I bet you have. Why were you searching for me? Jesus asked. Didn't you know I was in my Father's house? Mary and Joseph didn't understand. Jesus continued to grow and learn. So he was saying he was in his Father's house, meaning God's house, the temple, right? And Otto says, I'm always trying to teach my teachers important stuff. And Ada says, I guess you're not as good as a teacher as Jesus, Otto. All right, let's take a peek here. So, oh, and then on page 2030, we're going to read. So then when they finished everything required by the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own town of Nazareth. The child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him. So that was after they found him, right? And Mimi says on here, the trip from Jerusalem to Nazareth in Galilee was over 90 miles of dusty walking. Joseph and Mary were probably tired and dirty when they finally made it. Oh, this is when they're headed there. Sorry, that was a So here's some questions for you, and you can pause if you need to after each one. Why were Mary and Joseph so tired? Well, if you just listen to what Mimi said in here, it's 90 miles of traveling on dusty roads, right? And that was not in a car, right? That was walking or riding a donkey or something, not an easy trip. Why was Jesus missing? Why did he go missing? Was he in the temple? He's in the temple, right? When have you accidentally gotten separated from your parent? That ever happened to you? It's kind of scary, huh? How was Jesus impressing the people in the temple? What was he talking about? God, right? Because he knows a lot about it, and they were impressed. And how did Jesus respond to his worried parents? This might have felt a little different than what you expected, right? He was like, why are you worried? Like, I'm in my Father's house. Of course I'm fine, right? But Mary and Joseph didn't quite understand, and they were thinking, you've been gone for 3 days. And Jesus was like, this is where I belong. So a little bit different. So that was the story of Jesus in the temple. And if you get a chance, you can do the sheets that are up above. There's some fun stuff in there. And I'm going to end us with a prayer. Dear God, thank you for church leaders who welcome our questions and guide us into better and better conversations about you. Just pray that you would be with us this week, and thank you for a wonderful Christmas. All these things we ask in your name. Amen. All right, friends, I hope you have a great rest of your week and a New Year's as well. And we will see you next week.